Hey, quick question. What are you passionate about? Is it autism, hearing loss, adults with aphasia? What if you could create not only a private practice that served that population, but also allowed you to serve as a consultant, author, speaker, and parent education and empowerment coach? In this interview that you're about to hear with Crystal Sanford of Sanford Autism Consulting, you will hear about how Crystal created a business that allows her to have a big impact on a population that she cares deeply about, both professionally and personally. If you are passionate about a specific clinical population and you want to not only think big, but also have a big impact, stay tuned. I'm Jenna Castro-Casbon, speech-language pathologist, business coach, and creator of the Start Your Private Practice system. And I'm on a mission to turn stuck SLPs into successful private practitioners. If you're tired of dealing with high productivity requirements, high caseload sizes, and low pay, it's time to take control of your professional, personal, and financial life and finally get the freedom, flexibility, and financial abundance that you deserve by working with private clients in your own practice. Join me here each week as I share tips, best practices, and inspirational interviews on the Private Practice Success Stories podcast. If you're a private practitioner or one in the making, you're in the right place, so let's get started. Okay, so before we dive in, can you please share your name, your location, and the name of your private practice?
Yes, so my name is Crystal Sanford. I am located in San Diego, California, and the name of my practice is Sanford Autism Consulting.
So I'm so excited to talk to you tonight, Crystal, and just to get to know you better and get to know your private practice journey. Before we learn about what you're up to now, can we go back to the beginning and have you share what your early career was like as a speech pathologist?
Yes, definitely. So I've been in the field for over 20 years now, so I'm dating myself. But way back when there was not a certificate or a credential degree, I was a slipper in undergrad. And I did that and fell in love with the field. And so continued in my education and became an SLP. And I practiced in Los Angeles County in California, as well as in San Diego County. And so I loved kiddos. I worked in public schools the entire time. I had a real affinity, gained that for the older kiddos. So I worked 4 years in high school, 9 years in middle school, and started really getting an interest for autism and kiddos impacted by autism, and just so fascinated by the array of abilities and interests and such things. And then, surprise, I got married a couple of years later, had my first child. And in about 18 months, I started to suspect that she too could be on the spectrum. And so no one would believe me. First time parent, you're an SLP, of course, you're looking at all the, milestones and just, looking too deep. And so it couldn't be autism. She looks at me, she does great with adults. She couldn't have autism. Well, by age 3.5, she finally was identified with autism. And so that began my journey as a parent, and a few other things happened in my life at that time. And I told my husband, I said, I think I'm going to finally start a business, because I kind of had a feeling that one day I'd start a private practice. And, I started watching, your stuff and got connected with your stuff. And I thought, I think I'm going to do it, but I think I'm going to really focus on supporting families around autism.
I love how, sometimes it's like you've been preparing for something you didn't even know that you were preparing for, right? So
Yes.
That early career of you working, with the kids that you were working with and falling in love with autism, then obviously falling in love with your daughter, who then happened to have autism, right? Like, how lucky is she that she had you as a mom?
Yes, it has just been a wonderful adventure. And definitely, I think all of the things that I'd learned as an SLP really properly, as much as possible, prepared me for supporting her. And so now she's 10 and she's thriving, and I'm helping even more families now out of my own experience.
Well, and I would imagine that the families that you're working with also feel so lucky to have found you as someone who understands both the personal and professional experience.
Yes, because through that, you can get an SLP. All of us are wonderful in our craft, but there's just a little bit different when it comes from the heart of a parent who can kind of pair the real life experience of raising a child with the skills of, being a speech pathologist. It's unique. And so I'm very honored to offer families.
Yeah. So can you tell all of our listeners what this consulting model looks like for your private practice? Because everyone's private practice looks a little bit different. So how would you describe what yours looks like?
So mine looks much different than I ever expected. I initially thought that I would become a private practice SLP and I would just offer speech therapy and assessments and treatment and parent support to autism families. But what ended up becoming the need that parents continued to have was around IEP support and how to navigate those waters. And, that was my experience. I had written IEPs, sat in IEP meetings for 20 years. And then to have navigated as a parent, I was able to help parents, out of that experience. And more parents kept looking for that support. And so I decided to get some additional training. So I've taken multiple training courses and read multiple books and learned the law. I actually took a class out of one of the law schools here in San Diego, all around special education advocacy. And so right now, my practice looks like special education advocacy, actually. And so that's about 50% of what I do. I also do parent education training around the IEP process and how to support their kids, primarily autism parents, as well as other families impacted by other needs. And so then I do the parent education and the advocacy and training classes to families.
I love that. And then do you also do any kind of like public speaking or books or that kind of thing too?
Yes. So I wrote my first book last year, which was actually a caregiver manual helping to support families so that they can access respite care and so that they can train the person that's going to work with their child to give the best care in the parent's absence so that parents can really start accessing that self-care time. So that book is out there. I do also do some public speaking at parent groups and other community groups around San Diego County.
I love it. You've done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
you're a busy woman.
It's crazy. Yeah. And parenting 2 kids still in a pandemic. I mean, I don't know what I'm thinking, but there's a need and I want to fill it.
Well, and I think that that's exactly what, people like us do, right? True helping people find ways to help like in infinite ways, right? And sometimes it's hard for us to turn the helping off.
That's very true. Yes, I've actually also started a podcast because I felt like that's another space where special needs families don't necessarily have a place of their own. And so many of the parents, when I interview them, they talk about that feeling of isolation and maybe sometimes afraid or ashamed or not really able to reach out. And so I developed this podcast all for special families called Thriving Special Families. And I have guests on there who have something to do around special education or caregivers, other parents who have, done things, authors. So found another way to help families as well. So it is hard to turn it off. You're right.
It is, but it's also a gift, right? I feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel like in some ways, I get tired from time to time, but I have a lot of energy for the things that I'm passionate about. And I can tell that you have that same level of energy for autism and for helping families and for advocacy, and your community clearly needs you. And I'm so excited that you're there to fill that need.
Thank you. Yes, I have been on the side of, one side of the table where, parents are, they're heartbroken or they don't know what to do and they're just, signing their life away year after year. And I thought there's got to be a way to empower parents more, and as an advocate, I tell parents, my job is to work myself out of a job. I want to empower you. I want you to have the knowledge that you need because you're going to be with your child for the rest of their life. And I want you to be able to make meaningful decisions and meaningfully participate in your child's education. So that it is an honor.
So right now, at the time of this recording, we are still in the middle of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when I ask people this question, it's kind of a funny thing to answer, but what do you see as the future of your private practice and your consultancy and everything else?
That's a good question, right? So many of our businesses have struggled, and I think we're all kind of finding a way to reinvent ourselves, and meet the needs of our clients. But for the future, I see myself expanding to greater parts of California. I've gained efficiency with the law in California, so I'd love to reach out more in Northern California, as well as Southern. I've actually supported a few families outside of California as well, so I'm learning the law there as well. So expanding the advocacy that way, and then also expanding the reach of my parent training classes. I'd love to get more parents in there. I've had parents say, this class should be mandatory. I wish I had this when my kid first started in IEP. So I want to get as many parents as early as possible empowered with this knowledge.
Well, I think that that's a way that you can increase your impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things about private practice is that there's only so many individual clients you can see, right? When it's, individual sessions or vows, and even if you have a whole team of people, but if you really want to impact people at a much bigger level, you do have to think outside of your local area.
Right, exactly. And so, that's where I started. I think that's what we all do, right? And so I just considered myself supporting families right here around neighborhoods in San Diego. But I had a really good business coach who, from the beginning, encouraged me to think bigger. And I couldn't really grasp it initially when I started 4.5 years ago. But last year with the pandemic, something just kind of clicked and said, hey, Crystal, now you can be live, you can be on Zoom, you can reach more families. This thing can grow bigger because there is a need and there is a way for me to have a bigger impact.
You just said something really important, which is about thinking bigger, right? And I think that SLPs do tend to be limited by what we can envision for ourselves.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes other people, it takes seeing what others can do to see what kind of options there are and what kind of a vision there could be. So good for you for thinking of lots of different ways to have your vision come true and everything, because like you said, there are families all over, not just in your part of California, but all over California and then outside who really need this help.
I was just going to say, I want to say thank you to you because, like I said, I started listening to your podcast and following your, participating in your Facebook page and listening and seeing the variety of private practices through your program really is a piece of what helped me to know that, I can do more than, just what I've seen or just what I've experienced. So thank you for exposing us to opportunities and options that are out there.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. This is my favorite thing of what I do in my business is getting to talk to people because there's a lot of people, I've known your name for a long time, right? I've seen you post in groups, I recognize folks, and then I actually get on these calls with them and then I get to know them a little bit better. And then the listeners get to know, new people as well. So I do have a question related to, what advice would you give to somebody listening who may not want like a traditional private practice with, one-to-one services, people who might want to go along the lines of what you've done and offer more of a consultant role, more education and that kind of thing. What would you tell a listener who was in that kind of situation?
I would tell them to really think about and dive into their passion. That really helped for me. I knew my passion was autism. And so I looked at that and looked at what is it that is the need for this type of a population. And so if there's someone who's saying, I don't necessarily want to be an SLP for the rest of my life, what else can I do? I would say, well, what is your passion? Is your passion teaching parents? Is your passion supporting kids with AAC? Whatever that thing is that really gets you going, dive into that and see where the needs are around that area and see if that's something that you could possibly fill.
I love it. Is there anything that we haven't gotten to talk about yet that you want to make sure that we talk about or that the listeners hear?
Yes, if there are listeners who are out there, maybe who are SLPs throughout, California, I would love to share the opportunity that I offer every month, which is the Crystal Clear IEP Conference. And that is a 4-hour conference on Saturdays where I dive deep into IEPs with families and we talk about anything and everything IEP related. And I take them from IDEA law and preschool assessments all the way through goals, accommodations, and high school transition. And so if you know of families that need some understanding in this area, feel lost, isolated, and whatnot, and especially if they're a part of the regional center in California, definitely send them my way and share this as a resource, because I think it could be super valuable to families right now.
Perfect. And what is the best place for people to go to find out about that program and also about you in general?
So my website is probably the best place, and that is SD, like San Diego, autismhelp.com. So that's SD, autismhelp.com. People can always find me on Facebook and Instagram. Those are the two popular places that I hang out in social media. And they can always find me via Sanford Autism.
I love it.
One thing I didn't say is that I have actually started training other people to do IEP consulting work as well. So I need
Keep talking about that.
Yeah, other people who are interested in maybe moms or people who SLPs at school site contact me who are looking and interested in doing some advocacy work. I've started a little training program for them too. So,
and where can people find out more information about that?
Yes, so that's on my website as well. I offer an IEP consultant biz building program where SLPs or professionals, anyone with any kind of special ed experience can have this training to support them in building their own either advocacy practice or adding that as a piece to what they're already doing in their business.
Perfect. I love it. Crystal, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your expertise, and really for sharing what it's like to be an outside of the box type of private practitioner. I think that kind of information is really, really valuable for people who are really charting their own path in private practice. And certainly that's something that you have done.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for the inspiration along the way. I really appreciate that.
How amazing is Crystal? I love her energy. I love how she shared the winding road that took her to the path that is allowing her to serve in a way that she probably never could have imagined. Crystal has created a business around her professional and personal passion, and you can do this too. Just like Crystal is passionate about people with autism, my clinical passion is for people with aphasia and traumatic brain injury. And while I have been proud to serve those kinds of clients for a long time, I have another group of people that I feel passionately about. Speech-Language Pathologists. This year, I am on a mission to help at least 1,000 SLPs start their private practices, and maybe you are one of them. Maybe you're like Crystal, and you have one specific population that you want to help, or maybe you want to be more of a generalist and help a lot of different kinds of people. In private practice, you get to make that decision. The first decision that you need to make is whether or not you would like to learn more about starting a private practice. If the answer is yes, I want to invite you to watch my free training where I share the ins and outs of private practice, as well as some big mistakes that you should avoid at any cost. That free training is available at startyourprivatepractice.com/webinar. Thank you for listening, and as always, I'll be back next week with more information on how you, yes, you, can have your own private practice, work with your own private clients that you feel passionately about, and start to take control of your professional, personal, and financial life. See you then.
I decided to invest in the Start Your Private Practice program because I honestly had no idea where to start.
And I just didn't really have the confidence or the know-how to be able to do that.
So it was really nice to have a system that was all set up for me. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch. It was all there for me.
And I was able to land a client within about the first week and a half of me going public with my private practice.
So now I have 12 clients. It is such an invigorating and amazing experience.
If you want help to start your speech therapy private practice, then head on over to startyourprivatepractice.com/waitlist so that you will be notified as soon as we reopen the doors to the Start Your Private Practice system. Again, that's startyourprivatepractice.com/waitlist. I cannot wait to help you start